Hello everyone. How are you guys doing? For the first episode of this video series called Connect to Content, we are going to talk all about B2B content planning. And to talk with us today, we have Natasha Puri, who is the content marketing head at Juggernaut Books. She is also been named as one of the 50 most influential content marketing professionals in India and has expertise in B2B content. Hi, Natasha. Welcome to this episode.
Hi Anju. I'm glad I'm here. Happy to be here.
Please tell us something about your work in B2B marketing so that we can set a context and then take it from there.
Sure. So actually, much before I joined Juggernaut Books, which is a publishing house based in Delhi, I had a stint with Zoho, which is a SaaS unicorn, and I was working with their content team, and that was a complete eye opener for me because so far I had only worked with B2C companies, so I understood content. Like I had almost 3 years of work experience at a publishing house. So I was working with like books, but working with Zoho was my first stint at B2B content, and it really changed a lot of things for me because it gave me a lot of insight into how content marketing is actually working in the US. There's just so much scope in B2B content, and even though I moved on from Zoho, there's a lot of work that I have done with companies like Zoho, Freshworks, Hippo Video. There's this company called Mobius Services. So all of it very technical B2B content. And considering my background is in journalism, and this was absolutely new to me. I think my time at Zoho kind of prepared me to create this B2B content, and having that outsider's perspective is actually a great, advantage when it comes to B2B. And in fact, we can talk about this in this conversation as well, because a lot of people who are venturing into content writing feel very skeptical about getting into B2B content because they feel that अरे ये तो हमें समझ नहीं आता, and I don't have an engineering background or a software background. But I think what I have learned in my experience is that that background may seem like an advantage, but being an outsider is a much bigger advantage. You just have to know how to write.
How is B2B content different in terms of planning and structuring? Like B2C, we understand when we are talking to the target audience. B2B, your target audience is slightly changed, it's moved. So how is it different in terms of planning and structuring?
There is a lot of difference, okay? There's a lot of difference in the sense that I think with B2C, I mean, it might upset a few people, but I think you can get away with a lot of things. For instance, I've worked with a travel company, right? So even creating content for travel, from a customer point of view, it's relatively simpler. It's more straightforward. With B2B, it's a lot more complex in the sense that you have to go deeper and understand the topic deeper. There is some level of subject matter expertise that you need to develop. So this is something I tell a lot of writers who I work with in the B2B sphere, that you can write, right? But you need to be able to research a lot. It's so wonderful that right now we're living in times that nothing is out of your reach. So it's not like, you need to get a degree to know something. You can read 10 blogs, or you can skim through half a book, and you can understand a topic very well. So I think I would say one big difference is that B2B writing requires a level of subject matter expertise, which is not out of your reach. So it's not to feel intimidated by. Secondly, I think that B2B requires a better understanding of your reader's persona. So these are terms that are used very often in the B2B world: buyer persona, user persona, reader persona. And this is very typical marketing jargon, right? So I think that content writer who's writing for B2B, you do have a leverage versus another writer if you can understand buyer personas well. So by buyer persona I mean, who is it that you're writing for? Is it the CEO of a company? Is it, are you writing for someone who is just starting a small business? Are you writing for someone, a much bigger enterprise, right? Thirdly, I would say I think B2C content is the advantage is mostly restricted to SEO benefit, because there is quite a lot of saturation of B2C content in most industries. B2B, the benefits are much more. I think because it's more result oriented. Like how many leads can I capture with this content? For instance, if you're writing an ebook about, say, marketing automation, right? It will be on a landing page. Someone has to enter their details, their email ID to get that ebook. So
Right.
immediately it's a direct result, right? You're generating leads via that piece of content. So I think that is a big difference, and I feel it's also a very exciting thing about writing. I think that is why I have continued in B2B content creation, because I see that there is a direct sort of relation to any sort of marketing results. And then I think I would finally kind of say that obviously, because B2B is slightly more rigorous, it pays better. So if you're a freelance content writer, you should work towards establishing yourself as a B2B content expert. It's tougher, but because there are fewer people who do it well, your voice and your talent will be appreciated. And I say that fewer people because I think that there's a very thin line, okay? Like, there are technical writers who can write technically, and then there are writers who can write well but don't understand the subject. If you're able to marry the two, then you have a winning combination, because most technical writers get so, these are the people who have an engineering background, right?
Right.
They have that developer wala background, so they come in and they're so technical, they're so involved in the product that they can't think from a marketer's or a user's point of view. When you're able to marry these two things, then you have a winning combination, which is why I feel that freelance writers should venture into B2B content.
We work with a lot of clients on content development. So they come from various sectors in women's web. I mean, some clients, of course, understand their market much better. And what ends up happening is if the client is a is a niche company, they're so involved in the product, it'll become very technical. So how to keep
Yeah.
your content relevant and interesting to
Hmm.
your buyer persona, like you tell your buyer or your leads that you're looking at, how to keep it relevant and interesting, because if it gets technical, it might not appeal.
Right, irrespective of B2B, B2C, whatever. Even while writing a book, most people will tell you, if you want to write a book, read a lot. And I have come across a lot of such content writers, so I can vouch for it. There are so many writers out there who are just faking it. They don't know the subject, and you don't need to be an expert. I'm saying, but they're not even pretending to be experts, right? It's just so surface level. There's no substance, and that writing will take you as far as SEO, but it won't take you further, right? So if you really want to do well in B2B content writing, please read and consume a lot of that content. And if you're already on assignments, and I do this at times when I'm working on freelance projects, I very clearly tell my client that you give me the first, whatever, 1 week, 4 or 5 days to just do research, because I'm not from your field, and
Right.
I need to understand this not just from the product point of view, but from your buyer's point of view. What is the content they expect? What is the tonality? What is the way they want that content communicated, right? At times it is very thought leadership. First and foremost, please don't skimp on that research. That is, I think, 80% of what helps you stand out.
Mhm.
Second is, like any other piece of writing, you have to give your writing some personality and some sort of a tonality. Now, at times, the company that you're working with, the brand already has a voice, so you have to familiarize yourself to that voice, and then take it from there. or they don't have a voice, and you kind of find a way to merge your writing voice to what they want to say. I'll give you an example. So when I was working at Zoho, again, no technical background. I didn't even understand what those products did, who they were for. Okay, I just started reading, and I was like, okay, I'll try and create something. And we were, more than anything else, we were catering to an American market. I just started reading so much of competitor content that I started writing like that almost, right? Like that's the transition that happened. So getting that tonality right, basis who you are writing for, and going to competitor websites and constantly following their newsletters, their blogs. I feel very shocked at times when I speak to writers who say they are part of their subject matter experts or something, and they have not even followed certain newsletters, right? Just subscribe to newsletters and let that content keep coming, because that's when you understand how they are talking to an audience, right? And it gives you so many ideas as to what how you want to do the same. Another thing I'd like to say is that don't think of content only in one way. So don't think of it as an article or a blog alone. We don't have the luxury of that anymore, right? I think we have to be open to looking at content in all its forms. I mean, even a tweet is a piece of content today, right? So if you are writing a blog which you think would make a great infographic, I mean, then start thinking like that, right? If it can be a video, so don't look at content in just one way. So, and that actually keeps you very enthused and going, right? Like otherwise it can get very monotonous for you as well. And last point I would say is that relevance, right?
Right.
In B2C, this is, you see this a lot. So if, I don't know, Sachin Tendulkar is trending because of something, you see that every brand is talking about Sachin Tendulkar in their own way. They have
Right.
created something, right? And but I feel that B2B also, there is a lot of area to play around. If you really wish to. For instance, there is this huge conference that happens that Salesforce does, which is
Mhm.
called Dreamforce. And though Zoho has nothing to do with Dreamforce, every year they do a marketing campaign around Dreamforce, basically pitching Zoho CRM, which is a competitor product, right? And around that campaign, there is so much content that is created. So I think, of course, in B2B, you have to be much smarter. Everything is a lot more, result oriented. So you're not going to just spend a lot of time to create content, which is not going to do anything. But relevance is important. Another example I can give you is again another conference that happens. Mobile World Congress happens. Okay, and for one of my clients, we quickly jotted down a list of 10 practical tips for you when you're at Mobile World Congress, right? And it really resonated with a lot of people because they go to this conference and they're not able to get enough meetings. People get lost. Like, there's a lot of frenzy and chaos. So this 10 point sort of practical guide, and we just churned it out in what, half an hour, because my client had been to that conference so many times. So he said, yeah, I think we can just write something like that. And that piece of content did well, right? So relevance is important as well, but you have to be selective. So yeah, these are my four points to keep things interesting.
You mentioned that this piece of content did well, but can you expect every piece of content to do well, or is there a lot of experimentation with it in B2B?
No, yeah, I mean, you can't really expect everything to do well in B2B or B2C, right? I think at the end of the day, for everything when it comes to the internet and creation, content creation, consistency is, rates higher than anything else.
Right.
So if you are working with someone to create content for them, and in fact you should tell clients that if they're expecting one blog that you'll write is going to just get them
Right.
xyz kind of views, it's not going to. Content is always like, it's cumulative, right? Things, you just have to keep at it, and some things do
Long game.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and some things do well and some things don't. At times, things that you just don't expect will do well, they do well, right? Having said that, I mean, we have to still have certain checks and measures to ensure that certain themes are resonating.
Yeah, and it comes with practice or understanding your field or being doing it for a period of time, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, you mentioned different formats. So there are now podcasts, there is video, there is snackable videos, there is interview formats, there is deep dive, long research reports, white papers. So and like you mentioned, tweets or social media posts, they are also content or infographics. So how do you figure out a proper mix such that your audience is getting different types of I mean, the same messaging in different parcels?
The thing is that you don't have to think of different formats as either or. So either I'll write a short blog post or I'll write an ebook, because the beauty of B2B is that every piece of content serves a purpose,
Mhm.
but it needs to be placed well. So, and that's why I think B2B content creation is so closely related to marketing. Uh, so, a writer who has certain marketing capability or develops it over a period of time definitely has an upper hand, because when there's a customer, there's a funnel, right? We talk about the sales funnel. Similarly, there's a marketing funnel. So a customer comes in, there is an awareness stage that they far from the purchase decision, they are just trying to get information. So at the awareness stage, a certain type of content works,
Mhm.
and mostly those are blogs, or it's a video, or it's like a video, introductory video. Now, as the individual goes deeper into the funnel towards conversion, towards actually making that sale, there are different types of content that come in.
Right.
So, for instance, a customer who actually commits to reading an ebook about marketing automation
Mhm.
is probably much closer to making a decision about your product or service, right? So he will not read one blog and say, okay, I will invest,
Right.
50,000 rupees annually on this product. No, he is going to go deeper. He's going to understand more. Then he's kind of close to taking a decision, almost there. But now you need to reel him in with a case study that, okay, my company actually worked with a client similar to your same industry, and this is what we did for him, XX% increase in revenue, right?
Right.
And that piece of content works well at that point of time. So now we're talking about podcasts, right? Like in pandemic times, we have seen this massive sort of explosion, audio, video, people are just going nuts. In India, there's been like I think an 80% increase in listeners of podcasts. Now, B2B might be a very small part of that in India at the moment, but in the US, I think B2B podcasting is like, is booming. There's just, I think every second company that you follow is now starting a podcast. Um, and why not? I think there are so many benefits to a podcast. Again, if you think of that funnel,
Mm.
it's that create awareness stage. Why? Because if I say I want to be show you that I'm an expert in B2B content creation, and I start a podcast and I say I get another influencer, like a super influencer, to be a guest on my podcast, that creates massive awareness for me. Then in terms of that funnel, that awareness stage on social through this podcast, I am getting users and customers in
Right.
and establishing my thought leadership, right? So every piece of content, I think, plays a different role. It's not either or. We shouldn't think like that. I think it's a collective effort. And it keeps things very interesting, right? I personally believe that. I think you start with your blog writing, but now let's see for how long that stays relevant. I mean, there are a lot of experts who say, कि, okay, now blogs and all are like not relevant, but SEO के लिए हम कर लेंगे. But I disagree with that.
Of
A lot of people say that ebooks are like, who's going to read itna lamba lamba? But I do think that in certain B2B sectors, an ebook is sort of a thought leadership piece, right? It gives you, there's an expertise in that. So
No, there is
there
definitely
is
a,
debate.
a role and a place for long form content. I mean, it is
Correct.
not being taken off completely. I mean, people keep talking about attention spans and shorter attention spans. That's true. But when it comes to any hard decisions, people do want to go deep and read research and understand better, right? So everything has its place, like you said. How do you find, like, from a client perspective, how do you find expertise in your related field?
That's actually a great question because I mean I can give you very hands-on tips on that because I struggled with it myself, right? And very practical sort of thing to it is QA. There is always so much written content, right, online. So just go online, go to competitors, read their blogs, subscribe their newsletters. That's A. Second is I read a lot of books actually. I think the books help you in a big way. Though you feel that, oh my God, what a tedious job. You have to write one blog about customer, customer support or customer service. You're not going to read an entire book about it. But I did think that, quickly skimming through certain things gives you a lot of, extra sort of substance to add to that piece of content. Three, I spoke to a lot of people. So a lot of things that writers don't do. Writers and need to talk to product marketers, they need to talk to salespeople, product sales and marketing, right? So these three sort of channels, you need to be talking to people there. It also means that you're aligning three, you're not writing in the air. You're actually writing something that's relevant to the business as it is, as people interact with it. It's a much more effective piece of writing that, do your research online, pick up a book and talk to people in the organization, get an internal understanding of how it works. Sometimes if you can't talk, I mean, it's a little far fetched, but you can even listen to customer calls and things like that, or go on social media and listen to what people are saying about that service, or read reviews. It actually impacts how what you're writing and how it actually comes out.
So thanks, Natasha. Thank you so much for joining us today. And some great tips and thoughts to go ahead with.